Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 mini-series with the Seattle Mariners. And the 2026 season is about ready to get underway today for our Seattle Mariners. We've had a solid spring training with a 16-10 record. And when we look at the preseason predictions for the American League, we're projected to go 99-63, which would result in our second AL West title in 3 years at the helm. We are coming off of an 81-81 season when we missed the playoffs, but after a pretty busy offseason, when we added several important players to the team, certainly expecting this team to be in the playoffs next year. The key addition to the pitching staff was Aaron Savale, who will slot in as our number 4 starter ahead of Lance McCullers Jr., push Brian Wu to the bullpen. Had a lot more significant additions to our everyday players. Tyler Stevenson in as a backup catcher. He'll start against lefties. Harry Ford and Cole Young, as well as Oslevis Basabe up from the minors. William Lugo, a Rule 5 pick, made the team. Bo Bichette was a big free agent acquisition. Hunter Renfroe picked up as a free agent also, and we traded for Josh Lowe and MJ Melendez. So a lot of turnover in terms of our everyday players who have been a pretty mediocre roster in terms of scoring runs the last couple years. Kind of crazy that when we think about it, the only holdovers who were on the roster as far as everyday players a year ago at spring training are catcher Cal Raleigh, third baseman Gleyber Torres, left fielder Juan Soto, and center fielder Julio Rodriguez. And other than that, everyone was acquired this offseason or came up from the minors last year. So it's going to be a very different look offense, and hopefully it will be a lot more effective than it has been the last couple of seasons. Coming off a year where we had the number 1 pitching staff in the American League in terms of the fewest runs allowed, but we were in the bottom third of the league in terms of runs scored, and that added up to a mediocre 81-81 record on the field. As I noted, we're expecting much more this year, and hopefully we'll get the season off to a fast start. And we've split our first 2 games of the year. Got a great outing from Luis Castillo in Game 1. George Kirby, not good his first time out. Went just 4 2/3 innings, allowing 6 hits, including a homer and 3 earned runs. More importantly, he's got a tired arm already. You may remember that 2 seasons ago, Kirby pitched 1 inning for us and got hurt while starting on opening day. Missed the beginning of last season, but did eventually bounce back from that and kind of gave us what we hoped a year ago. Taking a look at the team schedule, he's going to be out for about a week, and fortunately we do have a couple of off days in there, so I think we're just going to try to rest him and slide him back into the rotation whenever that tired arm is feeling healthy, assuming that he does recover in about a week. And our Mariners are off to a really good start here, 10-4, half a game up on the Rangers in the AL West. New addition Bo Bichette hitting .279, tied for second in the AL with 5 steals thus far. And Aaron Savale tied for second in pitcher WAR, 3 starts into his Seattle career. So some good performances from the 2 new additions. Are dealing with George Kirby getting banged up again. He did come back, and he's started 3 games for us now, started 2 games since we benched him for the injury, dealing with some wrist soreness from his last start. Should only impact him for 3 days, so he should be able to make his next start, but certainly feeling a little leery about the potential for a more significant injury since we're only on April 19th, and he's already had a couple of health-related issues this year. And we've made it through the month of April. The Mariners 17-8, still half a game up on the Rangers, best record in the American League, and behind only the mighty Brew Crew for the best record in baseball. Luis Castillo, 5 wins, first in the league, 39 strikeouts, second in the league, and he's now leading the league in pitcher WAR. Savale still tied for second. Won't be shocking news that Castillo, with 5 wins in 6 starts, is the American League Pitcher of the Month. And we have 2 big rookies this year in Harry Ford and Cole Young. And Harry Ford was just named the American League Rookie of the Month, hit .261, 3 home runs, and 10 ribbies. He is primarily playing first base for us this year, even though we do view him as a catcher for the long term. With Raleigh and Stevenson on the roster this year, we don't really need him at catcher. Taking a look at his fielding stats, you can see he's primarily played first for us. He is playing third against left-handed hitters, and he has 2 innings pitched behind the plate. So his defensive versatility hopefully will be an asset for him. In addition to the 3 home runs, he's also 3 for 3 on the base paths. Check in on our other top prized rookie as well. Cole Young hitting just .237, but still has a 110 WRC plus. He's got 5 doubles. He's walked 15 times. He's worked on his eye in the development lab in previous seasons. And he is also 4 for 4 on the base paths. So a respectable start for Mr. Young as well. And things are going swimmingly for the Mariners here in 2026. Another month already in the books. We've made it to June 1st. The team is very healthy. And we are also dominant on the field. 38-14 record, 731 winning percentage is the best in baseball. 7.5 games up on the Rangers at this point. So we've got the most wins in baseball, and we've also got the largest lead in a division of any team in baseball. Juan Soto, after a disappointing first year in Seattle, having more of a vintage Juan Soto season this year, 14 homers already, and he's third in the AL with 46 ribbies. MJ Melendez, who we brought over to specialize against right-handed hitters for us, has been excellent. 324 average, 9 homers and 30 ribbies in just 142 at-bats, and an OPS over 1. Logan Gilbert now ranks 3rd in the league in ERA. Luis Castillo still leading the league in wins, and he's 3rd in strikeouts and also leading the league in pitcher WAR. Taking a look at some team statistics here, 2 months into the season, 17-8 in April, followed by 21-6 in May. So we've gotten even better. The 38-14 record is 1 above Pythagorean expectations. And we're 27-10, 729 winning percentage against righties, 11-4, 733 winning percentage against lefties. So both significantly improved from a year ago, but particularly against the left-handed pitchers, where we were, I believe, 19-30. I think we were around 11 games below 500 against lefties a year ago. So some of the focus in this offseason on bringing on some right-handed hitters seems to have helped so far. And we've got it going on all cylinders because we've gone from a pretty mediocre offensive team to first in the American League in runs scored. And you can see we are in the top 3 in every offensive category except for home runs, where we're middle of the pack. And we are once again first in the American League in runs allowed. And we rank in the top 3 in every pitching category. And we're also pretty strong in our defensive efficiency and zone rating as well. So everything is going very well for these Buffalo Wings. Or these are not the Buffalo Wings. You can tell I'm in the habit of talking about things going well for the team that we played with in our OOTP 24 expansion. But these are the Mariners at this point. And Cole Young seemed to be a bit jealous that Harry Ford got Rookie of the Month in April because Cole Young is now the Rookie of the Month for May. Hit 325, 4 doubles, 2 triples, and a homer. Scored 19 times, drove in 17 runs. So taking a look at Young's statistics here, a couple months into the season, 281 batting average, 137 WRC plus. He's only played in 41 games. We are only starting him regularly against right-handed pitching as a left-handed batter. We're kind of putting the best team out there. Certainly, you could make an argument to get him as much playing time as possible at only 22 years old. But you may remember that he did go in the development lab this past off season for a base running program with us that went very poorly, and the feedback we got was that he could be more injury prone going forward than he was. So at least until we're able to hopefully this coming off season get him in a program where we can strengthen his core, so to speak, and hopefully anything else that's giving him an issue physically, going to be a little more cautious with him. And looking at his ratings, he's certainly a player that you need to have in the lineup against right-handed pitching. Against left-handed pitching, he's kind of borderline compared to some of the other talent we have on this team. So we're going to continue to be a little conservative with Mr. Young. Taking a look at Mr. Ford here, he's hitting 283, 7 for 7 stealing bases, 14 doubles, 1 triple, 5 homers, 129 WRC plus. So the two prize prospects that are close to Major League ready, and at this point actually Major League ready in the Mariners organization, are both off to very nice starts in their Major League careers. And we've simmed ahead another week, still playing great baseball, 44-15 record, still obviously in first place. Lance McCullers Jr., who's having a really nice year for us, 6-0 record, 3.22 ERA, is looking for an extension. You may remember that we've demoted him to the 5th starter this year. We got Houston to keep the majority of his contract when we picked him up in a trade almost a year ago at this point. But he is soon going to be 33 years old. He's fragile physically, has some negative personality traits, although none that are deal breakers, particularly for a pitcher. But at this point, he's looking for $17 million a year for 5 years. Not a number that I'm really interested in bringing him on board. Part of the reason to bring on Savale was to potentially prepare for the departure of McCullers Jr. and even potentially a departure of Logan and Gilbert coming forward. Hopefully that won't happen with Gilbert, but at $17 million a year for a guy who we envision as our number 5 starter, who's in his 30s and also fragile physically, is just not a number that's going to work for the Mariners. So we'll likely be letting Lance McCullers Jr. hit free agency after this season. But as we sit here on June 8th, up 11.5 on the Rangers, who are really struggling of late, 2-8 in their last 10, does seem like it could potentially be a very special season in Seattle if we're able to keep this team healthy. And still playing well a week later, wanted to check in on Matt Brash, since I've had some negative things to say to those of you who are Seattle fans about Matt Brash. And in some of my less mature moments, I may have started calling him Matt Trash when he was having some poor performances for us. But he seems to have broken through this year. We did invest a bit in him this past offseason. And he just had a 20-game scoreless streak broken. He's pitched 25 innings this year with 29 strikeouts and a 1.44 ERA. Only allowed 14 hits. The walks are still a potential issue with 12, but hasn't given up a home run this year. So Brash has been more than respectable for us this year with a 2.95 ERA plus and a 49 FIP minus midway through June. And we finally got our first injury of the year that's material. Oslevis Basabe, the young second baseman we picked up in a trade with the Yankees almost 2 years ago, was a bit of a surprise to make the team, but he is starting as our second baseman against left-handed pitching. He's the one who is in the lineup rather than Cole Young against left-handed pitching. And when you see what Basabe's profile looks like against left-handed pitching, you probably can understand that decision. And he's done a solid job for us this year, hitting .286, 2 homers, 12 ribbies in just 91 at-bats. Has put up a 118 WRC plus in that limited time. Herniated disc in his back that's going to keep him out for a week. We're going to throw him on the 10-day IL just to be conservative. You may remember from the last episode that we sent Nick Allen down to the minors since he still had options when we decided to keep Basabe on the team. So we've got a strong defensive infielder who could certainly contribute for us over the next week and a half while Basabe is on the IL. So we are going to go place him on the 10-day IL just to be conservative with him. We're not being completely conservative with J-Rod. He's got wrist tendonitis, which is supposed to impact him for about a week. Moderate impact on his throwing. So we're going to move him to the DH role against right-handed pitching, and hopefully that'll mean we'll only play him in the field once or twice over the next week. We do have Josh Lowe, who we kind of brought on to be our backup center fielder who can play center fielder against righties because he was already in the starting lineup. We don't necessarily have a great option for center field in our lineup against left-handed pitching, so we're going to be a little more conservative with J-Rod, although Cole Young can play center field. I wouldn't say he can play a great center field, but especially with Basabe going on the IL, I think even though Young as a left-handed hitter against left-handed pitching isn't an obvious guy to put in the lineup, will guarantee that we can move J-Rod to DH against everybody this upcoming week, which should be positive for us. And it'll also allow Gleyber Torres to play a little bit of second base like he did in the old days. And we're closing in on the end of June. Still been a dominant season for our Mariners. 58-21 record, easily the best in baseball. 14.5 up on the Rangers and 16.5 up on the Astros at this point. Juan Soto in his second year in Seattle, tied for second in the league in homers, second in the league in ribbies. The youngster Cole Young now leading the league in steals. Juan Soto is third in batter war. And Castillo having a Cy Young caliber season, leading the league with a 2.30 ERA, 14 wins, and he's second with 107 strikeouts. Not shockingly, he's leading the league in pitcher war at 3.3 as we sit here on June 29th. Did finally get some bad news on the injury front, unfortunately, and this one's going to hurt a little bit, but Bo Bichette, the big free agent acquisition this offseason, going to be out for 6 weeks with plantar fasciitis. He's been an average offensive player for us this year, 283 average, does have 17 doubles, 6 homers, and he's 11 for 11 stealing bases. 2.1 WAR, given his good defense, with the fact that we do have Basabe, who's back up, Cole Young, and we'll be bringing Nick Allen back up. We've got guys who can certainly play shortstop. Not as good defensively as Bichette is, but with the big lead that we have established in the division, feel like we can hopefully overcome the loss of him until sometime in early to mid-August. And with Bichette on the IL, Cole Young's going to become our everyday shortstop, and Oslevis Basabe is going to become our everyday second baseman, and we'll have Nick Allen up for a little bit of a veteran presence to back those two up at the middle infield spots. And we made it to July 1st, 80 games into the year with a 59-21 record, so winning just below 75% of our games. We don't have a Rookie of the Month for the first time this year in June, but Luis Castillo, who's having that brilliant season, just won his second Pitcher of the Month award. 15-0 on the year with a 2.39 ERA. 1.67 ERA in the month of June with a 6-0 record. So Castillo is having a brilliant season for us here in 2026, and he's not the only one on this team. As we sit here on July 1st, 15 and a half games up on the Rangers, 16 and a half up on the Astros. We are 9.5 up on the Orioles for the best record in the American League. And the Brewers still have the second best record in baseball, but they are 6.5 games worse than our Seattle Mariners at this point. So the season is off to a fantastic start. Stinks that we're going to be without Bichette for the month of July, but if we can keep this team healthy, I think we can definitely do some special things this season. And we played another couple games, both of which we happened to lose. So we stand here at 59-23, still a 719 winning percentage at the just past midway point of the season. Ownership very excited about how the team has performed. Happy with Oslevis Basabe at second base. Honestly, that's going to be Cole Young at the end of the year, and it was Cole Young until very recently when we made that swap. Happy that we've got good attendance. He's still angry that we haven't brought in a power hitter. I don't really know how he defines a power hitter. A season ago, when we first got this goal, we brought in Juan Soto and Gleyber Torres. And this past off season, we made that trade for MJ Melendez. I'm feeling kind of like in that Simpsons episode from 30 some odd years ago when Mr. Burns builds the all-star team and he's constantly yelling at Don Mattingly to shave his sideburns, and Mattingly doesn't have sideburns. I kind of feel like that with John Stanton kind of constantly ranting at me to bring in a power hitter. And our fan interest has also gotten worse, and that to me is a little disappointing. The fan interest dynamic in the game has historically, to me, been something that hasn't been handled all that well. But we were 85 at the start of this season, and we are playing over 700 ball. You can see we are selling out as often as not, and our fan interest has gone down a couple points this year, despite the fact that as we sit here on July 3rd, we still are number one in the American League in runs scored, and we are still number one in the American League in runs allowed. I just don't know why, as we head into the summer, why we would have lost fan interest over these last few months. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It doesn't, to a point that Patrick DeBonis brought up in a comment to a recent episode. Fan interest doesn't seem quite as volatile as it has in previous seasons, when you could game it a bit by signing players, and then you would also get hit pretty hard when a guy that you picked up for a 2.5-month rental left in the off season. So I like that aspect of volatility has apparently come down in the new game. I've experienced that as well, but I don't know if it's just a generic reversion to the mean or something that's happening during the regular season, because I can't imagine a team with a winning percentage in excess of 700 that's first in its league in both runs scored and runs allowed actually having lower fan interest over the course of the season, which is what we've experienced here. So hopefully it'll be one of those things that gets tweaked a little bit in the next patch, which last I checked still might happen towards the end of this week, although I honestly haven't looked in the past several days. But hopeful that a new patch is coming out soon and it'll address some of the little idiosyncrasies in the game and perhaps make them slightly less idiosyncratic going forward. And we've unfortunately gotten the month of July off to a bit of a disappointing start. We've lost 3 straight series at this point to the Orioles, lost 2 out of 3 at home against KC, and we just lost 2 out of 3 against Anaheim before we took the first of a homestand against the Rockies. Still have a little over a week to go till the All-Star game, but we're going to finish up this episode doing our mid-season review and then the start of the draft, so we'll know who our options are going to be. Not expecting there to be any significant differences in the team statistics. You can see we're off to a 3-6 start in July after having dominant months in April, May, and June. Our 62-27 record, right in line with Pythagorean expectations. We've come down to earth a little bit against righties and lefties, but still winning over 60% of our games against lefties and over 70% against righties. We've slipped to second in the American League in runs scored, still rank first in the American League in runs allowed, and our pitching and defense is incredible. Second in bullpen ERA, third in home runs allowed. Otherwise, we are first in the American League in every significant pitching and defensive category. And we're not too far off in the batting categories. Our worst rank is 4th in home runs and 4th in the base running metrics. So it has been a dominant season on the field for the Mariners, despite the struggles over our last 10 games. 15 up on the Rangers, 15.5 up on the Astros here on July 11th. Soto ranks 3rd in the league in ribbies, Cole Young 2nd in steals, Soto 3rd in batter war, and Luis Castillo 1st in ERA, 1st in wins, and 1st in pitcher war. Certainly, if he keeps pitching the way he has, he's going to be a very strong candidate for the AL Cy Young Award. Aaron Savale, in his first year in Seattle, tied for 2nd in the league with 10 victories here, 89 games into this 2026 season. So we know that the pitching has once again been excellent. We've already talked about Castillo, 15-0, 2.48 ERA, 121 strikeouts. George Kirby, 7-1 on the year with a 3.48 ERA. Number 3 starter Logan Gilbert, I guess, is the disappointment in the staff. 6-6 record, 4.49 ERA. Savale 10-2, and McCullers 8-3 with a 3.64 ERA. The back end of the bullpen, the closer, the stopper, and the setup men have all been very good this year. Andres Munoz, 13 saves, 2.36 ERA. And a ridiculous 17.2 strikeouts per 9 innings. He has been outstanding for us. We've moved Gregory Santos into that stopper role, and he's been very good. A sub-3 ERA with a high volume 60 1/3 innings over 41 games pitched. And then Matt Brash and Gabe Spire, almost identical statistics. Each have 30 innings pitched as setup men, and each have 1.80 ERAs on the year. Middle and long relief have been a little more problematic. Brian Wu moved out of the rotation, 3-3 with 4 saves, 4.93 ERA over 34 2/3 innings. Bryce Miller, who has been a starter for us much of the last couple years, a 3.55 ERA in 45 2/3 innings. The lefties have been disappointments for us thus far. Brennan Bernardino, 6.31 ERA over 25 2/3 innings pitched, and Bennett Souza, a 4.30 ERA, but he does have 36 strikeouts in 29 1/3 innings pitched. So maybe a big-time left-handed arm for the bullpen, and moving on from a Bernardino or a Bennett Souza would be something for us to think about as we get closer to the trade deadline. But don't really need to hopefully pay a lot of attention to this pitching staff because it has been outstanding thus far in 2026. Turning to our position players, and this is where, as we talked about at the beginning of the episode, we had a lot of turnover this past offseason. Cal Raleigh back as our everyday catcher, and he's been slightly above average offensively this year, hitting 241, does have 14 homers and 39 ribbies and 245 at-bats, a 1.2 WAR. Good, solid catcher. He is set to be making, he's set to make almost $15 million this upcoming year in his final arbitration eligible season. That could be what results in us moving on to Harry Ford behind the plate eventually. But right now we're pretty happy with Raleigh and Stevenson. Stevenson, 264 average, 2 homers, 13 ribbies, and 87 at-bats. He's been a league average offensive player, playing primarily against left-handed pitching. He's doing it at the major league minimum. Looking for $3 million a year over 4 years if we wanted to bring him back. So that may be something if we definitely decide that we're going to move on from Raleigh. Maybe we try to sign Stevenson and plan on him backing up Ford next year. Ford still having a pretty solid offensive year. 282 average as a rookie, 23 homers, 23 doubles, 6 homers, 35 ribbies, 15 of 17 on the base paths, 125 WRC plus. He has primarily been playing first and third for us, but he has started 6 games wearing the tools of ignorance, and he's even played a couple games in left field for us. So a really nice rookie year for the young first baseman who still may be our catcher of the future, as we talked about. William Lugo, the Rule 5 pick that we kept to be our our first baseman against left-handed pitching, hitting 267, 6 homers, 25 ribbies, and just 131 at-bats, 122 WRC plus. So he's done a really good job platooning at first base with Mr. Ford. Nick Allen, only 22 at-bats in the majors this year, but he is hitting 318 in that small sample size as a utility infielder for us. Oslevis Basabe, 272 average, 115 WRC plus, only 125 at-bats. He has walked 14 times this year, struck out 16 times, 3 of 4 on the base paths, does have those 3 homers that we mentioned. So he's been more than respectable for us as an infielder with the bat and a pretty versatile glove. Gleyber Torres, not great. Probably the weak link in our lineup, at least of the players that we've talked about so far. 247 average, 10 homers, playing third base. But he has been productive when he's been getting hits. He's already got 56 ribbies this season after having 68 all of last year. But when all is said and done, it's still just an 87 WRC plus. So a bit of a disappointing year from Gleyber. Cole Young having an outstanding rookie year, and now he's playing every day with the injury to Bichette, hitting 299, 16 doubles, 2 triples, 6 homers, 36 ribbies, ridiculous 58 walks. That's something that he had worked on in the past in the offseason. 23 out of 25 stealing bases, 146 WRC plus, and a 3.8 WAR on the season. And he's been playing shortstop for us the last couple of weeks since Bichette got hurt. And having an excellent rookie year. Him and Harry Ford both would expect to see them getting some pretty significant votes for Rookie of the Year this year. Josh Lowe has come on, and hit 289 for us with 25 doubles and 11 homers and 273 at-bats. We picked him up in a trade with the Mariners. Definitely paid full retail, but given, as we've talked about in the past, that he's a guy who can play center field for us in a pinch. He's our everyday left fielder against right-handed pitching, and he's put up a 132 WRC plus for us, playing primarily against righties, so he's done his job. Hunter Renfroe, a guy who's playing primarily against lefties, and he's done his job as well. 286 average, 5 doubles, 4 homers, and 105 at-bats. He's also walked 15 times and put up a 133 WRC plus. So a solid year for him, primarily playing against left-handed pitching, but that was the role we anticipated for him. We'll wait to get into the two big guns with Soto and Rodriguez at the end, but MJ Melendez, who's the guy who's platooning against right-handers with Renfroe, having an outstanding year. 313 average, 16 homers, and 47 ribbies, with a 161 WRC plus. He's a guy who definitely has benefited from playing primarily against right-handed pitching where he's most effective. Again, with Juan Soto, I get Gleyber Torres has been a disappointment. Soto was certainly a disappointment in his first year with us, which I guess is the only year that counts as far as that owner goal. But MJ Melendez is a guy coming off a 29 home run season who is hitting over 300 with 16 homers and 47 ribbies midway through the year. I still struggle how we've made no progress in acquiring a power hitter, but can't always look for perfect logic in the programming for a video game, as good as OOTP is. Juan Soto having a monster season for us, 275 average, 26 homers, 73 ribbies. He's walked 66 times already. So his on-base percentage is close to 400, a 960 OPS, and a 161 WRC plus. He has certainly more than bounced back from that disappointing debut in Seattle when he had just a 123 WRC plus and some injury issues a year ago. And then Julio Rodriguez is the franchise. A bit of an off year for him, believe it or not. He's hit 309 each of the first 2 years of this playthrough, winning an MVP award in 2024. 265 average this year, 18 doubles, 20 homers, 62 ribbies, and 11 stolen bases. Those are pretty good numbers for it to be an off year. Still has a 126 WRC plus and a 3.0 WAR as we sit here on July 11th. So everything is really coming up Millhouse for these Seattle Mariners in 2026. If there was a huge third baseman available on the trade market and they were willing to take Torres and something in return, I guess we could consider doing that, but there's not a lot of holes on this team. Before we get into the draft, we'll take a quick look at who's on the trade market right now as far as the trade block, and not a ton in terms of batters. Sean Bouchard and Nico Horner are the only 3-star potential players out there. Taking a look at the pitchers who are available on the trade block at this point, and David Bednar, Pablo Lopez, and Frankie Montas are the most highly regarded pitchers. If we're looking for a lefty thrower, doesn't necessarily looks like there's a major different maker at this point. Jalen Beeks, Ryan Baruchi, you can see there's a lot of 2.5-star kind of guys who have some holes in their game and probably aren't much better than the guys that we have on board right now, like Bernardino and Souza as lefties out of the pen. So not necessarily an obvious player for us to go after in the trade market. Certainly think that someone like David Bednar could absolutely help our bullpen. in the final year of his contract. It's just a matter, I'm guessing the Cubs are probably looking for a lot for him right now. Yeah, they're looking for a pretty big time and valuable player for a 2.5 month rental of an admittedly strong closer, but don't see a trade for Bednar in our future unless the Cubs get a little more reasonable with their demands. But there's not any obvious holes to fill when you're 62 and 27. Right now, the big hope over the next month or so is just that Mr. Bichette comes back healthy from that injury. And before we finish up the episode, we'll sim ahead to our first pick in the draft. And I will say this, this is the third draft that we've had here in this playthrough with the Mariners following the release of the second OOTP patch. And just as a quick look, there's a lot more potential at the top of this draft in terms of the pitchers and also in terms of the hitters than there have been in those first two drafts. So I don't know if that's completely coincidental or not, but this looks more like a type of draft where even if you're picking later in the first round, you can kind of convince yourself that you're still getting a guy who, if everything works out, can be a very important player for your team. So this certainly does seem a little more well-balanced to me than it did when I did the New York Yankees miniseries a few weeks ago that was using the original version of the game. So again, it's anecdotal. It's a sample size of one, but I do like that here in 2026 it appears that there's a little bit more high-end potential talent in this draft than there have been in the first 2 years of this playthrough. And with my pontificating about the draft done, we will sim ahead to our 16th pick in the draft. We ended up dropping one spot. We were order number 15. Although I guess there was actually a compensatory pick ahead of us, so that was not a result of the draft lottery. That was more just the fact that the Rangers got a compensatory pick. We'll be picking 18th in the second round. So the 16th pick in the draft, I would think that there will be some interesting choices for us to consider when it gets to us. And no time better than the present to find out exactly who's going to be available for us. So we'll go ahead and get the draft started. Auto pick to Seattle, and we'll take a quick look here at the most highly regarded 5 position players, and we'll also take a look here at the 4 most highly regarded pitchers. Doesn't mean that we'll go in those directions, but kind of have to cut things off somewhere. But I like giving my worldwide scouting team an opportunity to help me with some of these decisions. So we'll highlight a handful of batters and 4 pitchers who may be the way for us to go in this upcoming draft with our 16th pick. Sean Lakin, starting pitching prospect, potentially excellent stuff, plus movement and plus control potentially. The issue for him is that if that changeup does not develop, he's really a 2-pitch guy and more likely a reliever. Still think he could be a very effective reliever. Don't know that I want to pick him 16th in the draft. Has pretty good stamina, not great at holding on runners. Facing that excellent high school baseball up in the Vermont area. Doubting that Lakin is going to be the way that we go. Rob Hurley, another starting pitching prospect, a little bit better balance, movement and control, both could be 60 level stuff, not quite as impressive. A 2 to 4 pitch guy, if the change and the curve both develop, he's probably a 4-pitch guy. Really going to be dependent on that curveball becoming an excellent pitch, though, because his fastball, his change, and his sinker all look pretty average for a major leaguer. Nate Day, a little more highly regarded by our scout, plus stuff, well above average control, above average movement, and the potential for a 4-pitch arsenal. If that change in the splitter develop, like the high leadership, don't love the low intelligence. Pretty good in terms of his stamina and holding on runners. Definitely a solid prospect. These guys are also all looking for pretty solid money. And last but possibly not least, Ron Byers, another guy with potentially above average stuff, movement and control. Has a potential 5-pitch arsenal, although probably throw that curveball out at this point based on what our scout thinks. But still an interesting combination. Doesn't really throw a fastball, but a slider, splitter. I guess the cutter is a fastball, but not a pure fastball. Slider, splitter, cutter, circle change combination for him that could still be a pretty impressive 4-pitch arsenal. Don't love the low work ethic and the low intelligence. I think Day is probably the guy I'd lean towards if I was going to take a pitcher, but I've spent however many minutes I've been talking to you about this on these players at this point, and I'll certainly invest some more time offline, but that would be my initial review. Chris Navas, turning to the position players, a durable young second baseman. He is a second baseman with that very poor arm and that very good turn double play rating. Looks like he could also play left field. Boy, his arm is not strong. Pretty good contact hitter and potentially plus gap power, power and eye. So an interesting prospect, also a left-handed hitting infielder, which is always a potentially unique trait for some of those guys in the middle of the infield. Not the most frequent thing that you'll see out there. Wilson Mercedes at shortstop, competent glove, and another guy, really good contact, and then average-ish in terms of his gap power, his power, and his eye. Looks like he could be a pretty interesting player as well. And another middle infielder in Jard Luis Elamine. Boy, these guys are all very similar. Really good contact hitters, and then kind of competent-ish in gap power, power, and eye. Elamine, with the 60 power, has the most potential power of the group. Competent defensively. I don't hate any of these guys. I'm not necessarily in love with any of them either, but think they are all interesting prospects to consider. And the last two guys we're going to look at are another shortstop in Tyler Spangler and a catcher in Chris Vanderford. Neither is perfect in terms of their personalities. Vanderford, not the best leader out there, but looks like he could be an above-average defensive catcher with a pretty interesting bat, potentially plus contact and excellent home run power with decent gap power and eye. Also not going to strike out very much. Not a lot of speed, but he is certainly an interesting prospect. And then Tyler Spangler, the shortstop. Looks like he could play a lot of different infield positions, not necessarily any at an incredibly high level, but could basically play anywhere on the field except for catcher. Plus contact, excellent power, and potentially also above average gap power, eye, and BABIP ratings, average in terms of avoiding strikeouts. So a pretty well-balanced bat that could be a very useful left-handed hitter. The concerns are that his personality is not great. He's loyal, but he has the evil low leadership, low work ethic, and low intelligence. So not the greatest personality in the world. It'll be interesting to see who our scout recommends. He recommends Jared Luis Elamine, the shortstop who we did kind of like. And we'll find out who he would recommend if we were going to go with a pitcher. And he recommends Ron Byers if we were to go with a pitcher. He's the guy who I didn't love his personality either. So it looks like the highest potential guys out there are pretty much universally high school guys. Drew Burress, center fielder coming out of Georgia Tech, like his outfield range, decent speed, and a decent batting profile. If he fully develops, he's a pretty useful player, a very good outfielder defensively, decent speed, and a bat that should add up to a bit above average when you factor all this in if he fully develops. So he's one of the older prospects out there, but very high school heavy draft as far as the batters, and honestly, as far as the pitchers, it's similar as well. Cameron Johnson out of LSU has some very positive personality traits, already throws in the mid to high 90s, plus stuff, plus movement potentially, but the control looks like it might be an issue. Does have a 3-pitch arsenal that's not far off major league quality already, which is nice to see. Couple other, or I guess one other college pitcher, Colton Harmon out of Lowell. Some really positive personality traits. In fact, except for the high financial ambition, also known as greed. In the old days, if it wasn't for that and the greed was low, he'd have the perfect personality. His stuff, his movement and control, all in the average-ish range. But I know some of you have already noticed that he does look like a potential two-way player, which is always interesting. Decent home run power, but his eye, his gap power, and his contact all look like they might be a little below average. I think I'd have a tough time taking him at 16 overall, but I know that some of you are a little more focused on the college players than I am, and it looks like, at least in this draft, there aren't too many left. Taking a look at the draft log, and there hasn't been a college player taken yet either. So it looks like it's just one of those years where all the talent's coming out of the high schools, which is a little bit surprising. And with that, we'll call it an episode. It's been a great year for the Mariners so far, 62-27 as we sit here on July 11th. Only up 4 games on the Brewers now for the best record in baseball. So the Brewers have been playing very well of late, and at this point we are 6.5 up on the Orioles for the best record in the American League. So we were expected to have a big season when the year began. That was our expectation as well, and thus far things are largely going according to plan. And we'll find out what we do in the draft and what, if anything, we do before the trade deadline in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.